Today, we're lucky enough to have Bear Pop with Lumen Serve, and he's going to speak to us about tower lighting because there have been some changes since we last met and had a presentation. So he's going to speak with us today about some of those changes. So over to you, Bear. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you guys letting us present to you today. I'm joined by Mike Thompson, who's out of Atlanta and handles your region. And I'm Bear Poth. I live in Austin, Texas with my wife, Gina. And I'm the CEO of a company called LumenServe, and we do nothing but tower lighting. And like you, we own lighting systems across the country in 40 plus states and provide something called tower lighting as a service, which is a different model, different way of doing it. And I'm going to go through a set of slides where we're going to focus on some of the compliance things, some of the technical things, and then talk a little bit about a different way of offering this service, kind of that you may not have thought about. And Mike will cover that piece for you guys. Mike, how long would you like this presentation to last?
How long will it last? I mean, typically we go an hour, and then there may be some questions. It can be a little less too.
Yeah, I'm looking at 45 minutes plus questions, so we should be good. I just want to pace it accordingly because I know you're recording it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and begin to pull up some slides.
Great.
And
got it.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so this beacon right here is in North Dakota, looking out towards Canada, and we actually own that lighting system. And if anything goes wrong, that we fix it. And it's wrapped in a full compliance and monitoring system. That's called tower lighting as a service, a different way to provide services.
And I think she gets credit for that, the whole Republican Party should, because that's their mindset.
Hey, somebody's got their mic on. I can turn it off, but just letting you know in case you can get to it before I do. All right, carry on.
Okay, so one thing, just as background, we've presented to, I think, 57 SBE chapters now, including you guys. It's been a while since we presented to y'all, but everything, some of the really nice wood panel halls to some catfish parlors all across the country. So we like the SBE group and we're members, and what we like about the group is you guys are some really good engineers. You got a myriad of responsibilities. You got everything from power to internet transport to the information technology and social media stuff to sometimes video, always audio, to facilities, and then also the RF transceiver piece of it. And what we found is in a typical SB meeting, when we present, the average age is probably greater than 70 of the attendees, and probably a third of them are quote unquote retired, where they keep getting pulled back in it as consultants to continue to do work. So my hat's off to you guys. Y'all are great engineers. You have a really keen sense of what you need to accomplish. What's happened with the industry, as you guys know, is the engineers have been pulled in many directions. We'll often find people that work for multiple stations and doing things. And what our company tries to do is to take the lighting system piece of that, give you the best technology, make sure it's less expensive, and then come in and make sure you're under full compliance and let you focus on all the other stuff. So what we're going to talk about today is really three different pieces of it. The first of it is lighting regulation. The second is lighting technology. The third one is this tower lighting as a service, a different way of offering this type of service. And this is a pretty picture I like. This is looking out over Salt Lake City for one of our customers. It's a media customer. And a lot of I think all the photos you'll see are from different applications. We've got lighting systems in 40 plus states across the country. One of the things that we offer, and we're really proud of this, is we have a resource page. If you go to lumenserve.com, it's completely free. We're not going to ask you for any information that you don't want to give. Just go on and use it as you want to use it. It is a resource that has links to all the FAA, FCC related web links for tower lighting. We also have a number of blogs that are out there. So over a lot of the things I'll be talking about today. So if you hear me talk about the 7/8 inch rule or the concept of never painting your tower again, we have blogs on those. You got to read those. We have just begun to create a video series. We've got the first two released, and it's going to be over things related to tower lighting. And you'll see a couple of those out there on our YouTube channel. And it's things like, what does every tower owner need to know regarding tower lighting? And then, what is a NOTAM and how to file them and those sorts of things. And it's going to go through a full series of a lot of the things I'm talking about. We'll be releasing that over the next couple of months, sort of a video at a time, because we went out there and looked and we realized that there just wasn't good information regarding the subject. So we want to be a resource. And we also have some FAQs and some other things out there. One of the things that happens is we have had customers come to us after these presentations and say, hey, I just got a question. If you just got a question, call us. We'll help you out with it. It's no big deal. There's also opportunities if you're interested in getting proposals for actual work. If you go into our portal, there's a page here that talks about the different circulars and documentation that has managed tower lighting. So when lighting first came out, it was managed under sort of legacy FCC lighting standards link. A number of towers still fall under that because they've never rolled forward. They're still using their same determination. But starting in 1972, the FAA began to release the AC 7460. The first version that was 1A. The most recent version is 1M. So there's been progress along the way. We'll focus on the last two versions, which is Rev L and Rev M. Rev L's got a couple of changes, and Rev M came out in 2020. But you've got a bunch of other links and different things. And like I say, that's free at lumenserve.com. If you look at Rev M, which came out in late 2020, the biggest change was the addition of infrared specs or IR for LEDs. And here's a good little picture of that. On the left-hand side, you can see what, say, a helicopter pilot or an airplane pilot wearing without night vision goggles would not see the mountain. They would not see the lighting as well. On the right-hand side, you can see with night vision goggles. And what you're seeing there is the bright lights in all likelihood are incandescent. They're putting off a big heat signature because one of the benefits of LEDs is it doesn't put off a heat signature, which is what necessitated this. So they're using these helicopter pilots to improve their sight distance and identify these obstacles and terrains as the weather changes. If you look at it from the pure physics perspective on the graph below, the human eye has a certain wavelength that it's able to, see, and the typical red light on your tower is within that. When you put on the IR goggles, you actually need to go out to a higher wavelength out there in order to be able to see those. And so the top piece there is the actual language in there that talks about the need due to these night vision goggles to begin to include infrared in all new LEDs that are being installed. And so when that was initially done, the quick way to do it and the way there's FAA certified lighting was to put an infrared module I'm using a medium intensity beacon here as an example, added to the top of the fixture. It keeps a similar form factor. It's fully certified to all FAA specs, and it outputs that the infrared such that folks can see it. And it's a nice way, here's a visual picture of it, to implement that. We started actually installing these, I think, almost a year before they were required because they were available. We've not had any issues with them, and it's been a nice addition. There's a couple of things to learn about M, and most of the changes were regarding to infrared. So if you install a new IR LED lighting system that will be infrared, it's required to be, and there's all this relevant specs associated with that. There's some other updates on cranes. Down here in Austin, Texas, we have tons of construction going on. We're building the tallest building in Texas right now, and so there's cranes everywhere, and there's requirements for lighting in regards to that. But for tower owners, there's one really important thing to know. Normally, if you have a determination, generally speaking, you are grandfathered under that determination. In this instance, with the implementation of infrared requirement, there was a requirement that if you take an example, I'll just use an example of a 500-foot tower that's dual mode. Okay, so it'd be an E2, and say it's 500 feet tall, and so you'd have a beacon at the top and two beacons at the midpoint. And those beacons would, let's say that your installation is an older LED installation, and so therefore it does not have infrared associated with it. And if you were to have one of your middle beacons go out, you could not go back in and say, I'm going to replace that with an IR enabled LED beacon. In other words, you want to replace it with the same part, because what you wouldn't want to do is have a tower that looks like it's 250 feet when it's really 500 feet. So if that were to be the case, you would need to replace the top beacon with IR as well. And that's regardless of which determination you're under. So it's a common sense requirement to make sure that you don't have any false, appearing infrared beacons on your tower. And so that's applicable to all previous circulars. And by the way, if anybody has questions along the way, just jump in. Starting in 2016, we saw the change 1, and then in 2018, change 2 for Rev L. So we'll go to the previous changes there, because there's some things just to keep in mind and some opportunities maybe for tower owners. The first thing is, back in 2012, there was a study done on avian issues with migratory waterfowl, et cetera, and they found out that the solid burning sidelights would attract avian populations and have damage to those avian populations. And so they made some changes to it, which we call the Avian Standard, and there's a whole blog out there that talks about that. But basically, prior to this, the medium intensity lights were set up such that an E1 was up to 350 feet and an E2 was up to 500 feet. And for an E1 and E2 both, you can see examples there where you had solid burning L810 lights, okay? And so you'd have it at the 1/4 and the 3/4 level for that 500-foot E2 tower. When Rev L came into being, a couple things changed. One is the height for medium intensity got increased to 700 feet. That means that all the towers that were between 500 and 700 that were high intensity could move to medium intensity, which is much lower capital intensity to do that, much lower maintenance cost, et cetera. But the other thing that happened, you can see the dashed lines there, there's a removal of the L810 sidelights at the 1/4 and the 3/4 on the E2. And then on the E1, they actually made it such that these L810 sidelights would flash in synchronicity. So it was a good thing, and because it removed lighting systems. If you roll to Rev L or M with your determination, you can make those changes as part of that. This same effect, for taller towers greater than 700 feet, where you have the solid burning sidelights, those were also eliminated. So if you had an A3 or E5 or something like that with sidelights like that, those were removed. So that was a good thing. That's called the Avian Standard. When we go out and monitor our systems, we monitor a lot of different things. And this is an example of our screen there. I'm going to talk more about that on the way coming with regard to technology. But let's jump into something called what's called the 7/8 inch rule. And so prior to Rev L of the circular, the language basically said you could not have an obstruction for your beacon, and there was no specificity with that. Starting in Rev L, the language appeared to specify that, and that uses where we come up with the term 7/8 inch rule. And it says the widest structure, appurtenance, lightning rod, or antenna that can be placed in front of an obstruction light, including the L810 light, without significantly blocking the obstruction light's visibility, should be no wider than 7/8 of an inch. And so that's language out of there of Rev L, the circular. And so you can see a couple of examples there. The one on the left is what we call a nested lighting system. That's a system where you have some cellular arrays that have been extended above the beacon. The one on the right appears to have an obstruction that's greater than 7/8 of an inch. You can see that one of them has got a little lightning rod extension upon it. And in the rules regarding the L810 or the sidelights are that due to their smaller size, they should not be blocked by any structure. So you couldn't put a big whip antenna next to this L810 and block it that's greater than 7/8 of an inch. So we run into this a lot. You see it's particularly prevalent in areas where you have land mobile radio systems that are searching for that top real estate up there to try to maximize their coverage for land mobile radios. But you see it in other places, and there's really sort of three ways you can solve the problem. The first way is to remove the obstruction, whatever that might be, and that's usually more painful because it's often an antenna or something you need. But sometimes we have customers that say, hey, can you take down this antenna? It's not being utilized anymore. The other way you can do it is you can do what we call a beacon extension, which basically would take and increase the height of the beacon above the obstruction. Typically, we limit that to 5 or 6 feet maximum for serviceability perspective, but it's the least expensive way to solve the problem. And then the third way you can do it is to do what's called a +1 beacon. That's where you add in a second beacon, such that you have full visibility there. And to add a second beacon, in some instances can be hard, because if you added a second beacon to this nested array on the left-hand side, you wouldn't solve the problem. One of the ways you can add a second beacon is you can go as much as 10 feet below the top of the tower and put +1 beacon. So you could theoretically, not knowing the dimensions of this one, potentially solve this issue by either a beacon extension, which might be the best way of doing it, least expensive, or by putting a beacon on each side that's no more than 10 feet from the top of the tower. That's another way of solving the problem. So either remove the obstruction, put a beacon extension on it, or use a +1 feature. Here's an example of a, that's not one of our installations there. This is a before picture where someone is really focused on using the top of that. This is from our drone. We've got a former military licensed drone pilot on our staff. And this is one where we had to figure out, based upon, all these different antennas there, a way to try to have a +1 antenna with 2 beacons up there, such that if you flew around this thing at 360 degrees, you get 100% visibility, which we ended up doing. But these are some of the kinds of challenges that you see out there regarding the 7/8" rule. And as I mentioned, there's some good blogs out there on our lumenserve.com website regarding that. One of the other things that in this is a requirement to measure the voltage, and it talks about ±3% on an incandescent, ±10% on a strobe. When we go and measure ours, we have with the installations that we do, the new lighting systems, we have the ability to come in and do all that with an automated quarterly lighting inspection that goes through and runs the system through all of its paces and checks all the different current loads and day to night mode configurations, and also does that real time 24/365, 24/7, 365. So I think another topic is the biennial lens inspection. So this is language that was put into the L circular that says, due to the effects of harsh environments, light fixture lenses should be visually inspected every 24 months. And what you're seeing there is you see cracks, crazing, dirt buildup. The biggest issue probably is bird poop. And so when we do our biennial lens inspections, we use a drone. We do a roundabout on that. We record everything and put it into the logbook. And we see circumstances, like the one on the top left, you might have a situation where something has a lot of crazing. You have seen that historically with like headlamps on a car or whatnot, or the bottom left where you have maybe some outgassing from plastic that's deposited that begins to deteriorate. The one on the top right is just a classic mechanical issue, maybe ice or something, or had broken that. And on the bottom right, that's actually a real beacon that we saw that was out in the field. It was still flashing. It made our Beacon Hall of Fame. We've got a little museum back at the office. It was flashing every 36 seconds instead of the normal frequency of flashing. And that's an example of one that's clearly got a mechanical issue. And that's what you do with this biennial, which means every 2 years, and to make sure you don't have an issue there. Okay, the next item is the paint. And here's the specific paint. The paint piece comes from a couple places. One, it comes from the FCC Title 47, which talks about antenna structures requiring painting shall be cleaned or repainted as often as necessary to maintain good visibility. And then you can see the actual circular there that says the color should be sampled on the upper half of the structure since the weathering is greater there. And what we have is an example paint chart there, typical pass and typical fail. We will be including in our video series background on how to do this properly. Part of it is to make sure you have a good paint card. Paint cards are issued and you date them, and you can only use them for 1 year because the paint card fades just like your tower does. We have available to all you SBE members a paint card loaner program where we will send you a paint card that you can use for inspections if you want to do it yourself. And then you just slip it in an envelope and send it back to us. And so that's a really interesting a way to, you know, to make sure you have that. We see a lot of folks that we work with, and we've had hundreds of them. We do something called Never Paint Your Tower Again. And I like this picture because the guy's painting the white part, and there's some cows down there that have white on them. I wonder if he may have missed, but you guys know what you guys with painted towers know how difficult it is. It's
Hey,
funny.
Bear, question about the paint charts. You said a
Yeah.
1-year timeline on it. They're sold usually in an envelope. Does that still require 1 year, even if it's maintained in that envelope?
Yeah, my understanding is it's 1 year from the time of usage once you crack it open.
Oh,
Because yeah, but usually what we do is we get them, when we get them, we crack them open, we date them and start using them. So, you know, I think you get into a fuzzy area that's I've never seen anything written about it. Well, what would happen if you had it in an envelope sitting there for 5 years? I don't know. I think you want to make sure you got a good paint chart there. So what we usually do is we crack them open and we date them and use them, and that way we know we've got a you know, it's been a year since they've been opened up. They don't come dated though, which is interesting. There's a date on the back of them that you fill in yourself. Does that answer your question?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a murky area, but that's just the way we treat it. It's as soon as you open the envelope, you date it, and that way there's no question.
Yep.
So on the Never Paint Your Tower Again, you know, this is the thought of going from a painted tower to a dual mode. We've done almost a couple hundred of these, I believe. And basically what you're doing is you're moving from an A style painted tower, and you can see the graphic that I have up here does not show any of the L810 side lights other than on the A1, because so this is Rev L and beyond. You guys may have some painted tower that still have some of the solid burning side lights that can use the Avian to remove those. But what we've seen is that for towers less than 700 feet, there's an opportunity to take an A2 tower, and sometimes it's an A2 with side lights on it as well at the 1/4 and 3/4, and convert it and move it over to an E2 tower. And so by doing that, you've removed the need to paint it. I will tell you that from our experience, we have a lot of exposure to this. The only thing that went up more in price after COVID than hamburgers is painting your tower. It's crazy. We've got materials out there, and we'll be happy to send you one that talk about the benefits of this program that are still dated at $20 a linear foot on guide towers. And we frequently see that at 2, 3, and 4 times that rate now, depending on where you're at and circumstances. And so if you've got a painted tower and moving it over to a dual mode system is certainly worth considering. And we can help you with the numbers and how that would work. And we actually go do all the paperwork, you know, under your purview, but do all the heavy lifting to make sure we get the proper determination and everything done in regards to to do the 7460 filing to get that done as part of that process. So this is called Never Paint Your Tower Again, moving it over from an A style to an E style tower. If you're over 700 feet, it becomes a more interesting math equation, because you'd be moving from a medium intensity painted tower where the lighting systems generally cost less because they're medium intensity to a high intensity unpainted tower. And I'll just throw in that all of this assumes you've got a galvanized tower. If you don't have a galvanized, you got painting for other corrosion reasons. But if you're talking to greater than 700 feet, the math equation becomes a little more interesting. And we've not been able to make a good case for that for above about 1,200 feet. Although, in less than 1,200 feet, I think the math becomes something you would consider. And it has to do with the cost of the high intensity lighting system versus the rapidly inflating cost of the paint piece of it in terms of what works best. So if you've got a painted tower and you're interested in that program, we can give you both pricing and then, you know, run the numbers out for 10 years or whatever and figure out what makes the most sense for your budget. One of the things we've done is kind of simplify the compliance checklist for the stuff you kind of just need to be thinking about day to day. And this is on a poster that we provide, and we'll give you guys a link to it that's available to you. That you can send an email for, and we'll send you either an 11 by 17 or a 24 by 36. And it's monitor your lighting system upon a qualifying outage. Ensure notice to airmen is filed within within 30 minutes. And so what a qualifying outage is if it's a light that flashes. And if it's not operating pursuant to spec, so it could be out altogether. It could be like that one that I showed you earlier that was flashing every 36 seconds. You need to keep a daily monitoring log, keep your compliance logs on file for 2 years, quarterly on-site inspections, biennial lens inspections, and then for painted towers, do the paint inspection for the Style A towers. And so that is a quick little checklist, and it's the top left-hand corner of the poster we'll be talking about. So let me stop there and see if there are any questions regarding the compliance piece of it. If not, we will go into the technology piece of it. So this is a typical beacon there. This is one of our photos. This looks like it's a +1 application. There's a couple of different beacons there. And if you think about tower lighting, there's really 3 flavors. We have incandescent, we have xenon, we have LED. And the incandescent is the one Edison invented, and xenons have been around, I think, for 90 years, or someone told me. They've been around for a long time. And LEDs is, what literally any type of new lighting you're getting today. And I'm sure most of your house is LEDs today. Here's some examples of the different lighting systems that are out there. The one on the left is a classic 600+ watt bulbs, a couple of those in there with a Fresnel glass lens on it. And you can see various hybrids across there where some people combined LED with some other technologies, and it's really kind of evolved into something similar to what you see in the bottom right-hand corner, at least for a medium intensity lighting system. I've got a couple of these really cool looking old ones on the left side that you can retrofit with a household LED bulb and put in your office or those sorts of things, which are kind of neat to do. I've got one outside too that you can turn on. You can see it for a long time with the standard wattage in it. If you think about incandescence, it's high power consumption. I have heard from countless SBE guys across the country that we've spoken to that the bulbs that used to last for 2 years are only lasting for 11 months now. I've heard that story 100 times. And you've got a mechanical with solder connections and electrodes and cracked gas. And I'm not sure why that is. It might be because of foreign manufacturing or something that's not up to snuff. And then poor optical control. And we'll talk about that in a moment. If you look at the high intensity lights, these are your classic strobe boxes that are out there. And like it says here, 90+ year old technologies, flash tubes at least, and subject to arcing issues, etc. If you look at LEDs, it's the smallest light source available. It's ROHS compliant, which is an environmental compliance standard. There's no fragile glass, there's no fragile filaments, no corrodable contacts. It's got shock and vibration resistance, long life. This is an interesting slide. We began to really see a lot of LEDs out there in the mid 2000s in obstruction lighting. And part of that had to do with the luminous efficacy, reaching a point where it's on a really steep inflection point. So you're getting a lot more wattage. And this graph just runs through 2014 because virtually everything after that point was LED. Nowadays we're seeing LEDs out there that are 300+ lumens per watt. So I was just curious. This is a slide I built. That's what it says, source Wikipedia. I went and got the lumens per watt, or the luminous efficacy of the different technologies. So incandescent is about 25. A compact fluorescent, which you may still have some of those around your house. I've got one in my refrigerator that's a blue light. The beer tastes better with a nice blue light shining on it. But those are out there at about 75. Linear fluorescence, you saw those for years in grocery stores and whatnot, 4-6 foot type linear fluorescence. Those are 100 and 125. And then you've got metal halide and high pressure sodium, which are stadium lighting typically. And then you got LED way out there at 300. So you compare 300 to 25 and it's a big difference. I will tell you that there's two primary reasons why LED is more efficient. And the story that I would ask you, and I'll explain that to you why that's the case. There's actually two reasons. One of them is this graph right here is just the pure luminous efficacy. And you can see that these things have continued to get smaller. You got less frontal wind loading. You got less weight associated with it. And they've generally become more efficient from a power consumption perspective as well. Now, this is a concept of community-friendly optics. So if you take a beacon and set it on a bar stool and turn off the lights, you're going to see a line around the room. And the reason why is the technology actually beams the light towards the aircraft as opposed to omnidirectionally. If you go back and look at this slide here, on the one on the left, kind of the older technology, that's much more omnidirectional. It does have some Fresnel capability there, but it broadcasts it very omnidirectionally. And what this does is it points the light at it points the light where it's needed. So you can see the graphs of light pollutions, and you can see an incandescent bulb in the solid black line on this bottom left graph versus the dash line underneath, where your distance from the tower, the light pollution is very similar. So the classic thing is you're turning up an E2 tower and you say, well, let's test it. And it's day mode, and it's got a white light at the top of the tower, and you walk a football field away and you can't tell it. And you walk, 500 feet away, and finally you got to get in your car and you drive, and you finally say, oh, yes, it's working. And that's a great thing. One of the challenges we get is a lot of our lighting systems are sometimes still monitored by like the local police officer or whatever. And so we'll install a new system and they'll come back and they'll say, the lighting system's not working. We're like, oh, we just turned it on. We went through our full battery of checks. Everything's good. And so we say, why don't you drive to the same level as the light if you can, a mile or so away, and see if you can see it. And every time they say, oh, it is working. So we run into that issue, which is kind of the false alarm issue that's out there. But back to the question in terms of why, what's the best way and most efficient way to utilize this lighting? There's really two reasons, as I stated, and I'll use an example. If you had a room with a bulb fixture at the top of the room, in the center of the room, and it had an incandescent bulb in it, and someone said, what's the cheapest way, most efficient way to read a book? Well, someone would say, well, unscrew the incandescent bulb and screw in an LED bulb. And that would be right from a luminous efficacy perspective, which is you would be going from an incandescent bulb to LED bulb, so it'd help you there. But the correct answer probably is to take an LED light that clips onto your book and shines directly down on the page. So then you get the benefit of shining the light where it's needed, plus the benefit of the lumens per watt benefit of the better technology. So that's really what the technology is. There's a couple of reasons there. It's not just the fact that it's LED, it's also the fact that it's being pointed in the right direction. It makes it more efficient. This is an example of some beacons there. The beacons that we utilize, we don't manufacture our own equipment, but they are dumb. They don't have microelectronics up at the top of the tower. We all know, and you guys know better than anybody, that anytime you got chips and whatnot, you've got an issue there. So these medium intensity beacons do not have that. And they have a surge protector, and there's certain criteria to make sure it's properly grounded. What we do is when we do an installation, we take photographs of everything. These are actually, I think, all but the bottom one, closeout pictures. And then we share a link with the tower owner. So you get to see real time what those, and we have all those reviewed by our engineering team and then also by the OEM to make sure that they're installed properly. Here's some examples of high intensity. So this is greater than 700 feet now. On the left-hand side, you can see the old Xenon is moving down to the new LEDs. So the way that would work with high intensity is at each level, there are 3 different arrays, and each array has 3 elements to it. So you have a total of 9 elements really, and there's overlap. So the 3 arrays are covering 360 degrees. So there's 120 each with some overlap. And then within that 120, there's 3 elements that are covering 40 degrees each with some overlap. And then there's ice shields, and you can see the setup there for typical, and it's all of the same stuff that we talked about in terms of directing the light where it's needed and having infrared capability and those sorts of things is for the high intensity piece. Another thing to add is from an ecological perspective, just, up to 90% less, depending on what you currently have, reduces light pollutions. If you've got a bulb that you're having to change every 11 months or whatever your bulb is on incandescent, and you get out there and you have a crew, say they have to drive in from out of town and they have to stay in a motel, and then it's a bad weather day, they stay an extra day, and then they pull the light bulb down, you got to put it in a trash bag and haul it to the dumpster. And this just really helps make it much more efficient from that perspective. So I'm going to stop there and see what kind of questions we have from anybody on that piece of it. We're right at we're at 30 minutes, so we're good. We got one more topic to discuss.
Were there any other questions?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one. Can you mute my mic over there, Joe? Oh, it's actually my mic. Never mind. Hold on. Let me get this straight. I think I can do it here. I had two monitors working at the same time. I wanted to ask when it comes to monitoring, we have to do our quarterly inspections, and you brought up a point about the sheriff's office. I'm guessing that, or the police, when they were monitoring, I guess that was their quarterly inspection. Are there any situations where people don't put their eyes on that light flashing for verification that are acceptable? I don't know of any, but I'm just asking.
You need to do quarterly inspections. Actually, the example is you still have the ability, Mike, to go out to your tower every day and inspect the lighting system to make sure it's working visually, and then record that in your logbook. And if you see that it's not working correctly and you don't find it corrected within 30 minutes, you need to put it under NOTAM. Now, most people have automated all that. So that's what the sheriff was actually doing. He was on his rounds doing his daily review of the lighting system to make sure it was working properly. They had a manual knock, if you will. And so that's
okay.
Now on the quarterly side, what we do, I'll just tell you what our process is we go out to the lighting system and we make sure that it's operating properly. We run it through its paces. So with the systems we install, we can do it with our iPhone, or the knock can do it, which basically takes it through day mode, night mode, does a health check, make sure that everything is up to standard. You need to have no more than a 25% loss of LEDs before it comes out of compliance. That's the way the spec reads and it's designed. That's all built into it. But we also record it for 8-second video. And the reason why we do that is we've got the technology, we're already there, and we'd rather have the evidence just put in the logbook, say, yeah, we were there, and it's an 8-second video, and here's the results of it. And then we send the quarterly report. You have access to it whenever you need it, if you needed it provided, but on a quarterly basis, we send you a full report that says, okay, here's just your tower health. You had it on the NOTAMs under these dates and these times, and here's your 8-second video. Here's the quarterly lighting system with the big green check mark showing that your lighting system's good. So you got whatever you need. We actually have started, and Mike will talk a little bit about it. In the past, we had a lot of customers who said, hey, my lighting system's great, but I don't have time to mess with all the compliance stuff. Do you have anything for that? And we would pass on that. But lately, we're offering a product called Peace of Mind. And what the Peace of Mind product is we come in and we install a gateway. And the gateway comes in and it can monitor any kind of lighting system, regardless of the manufacturer. It'll monitor it both SNMP and dry contact if it's SNMP enabled. And then if anything goes wrong with that gateway, we'll fix it. So we're responsible for the gateway. And then we'll do the 24/7, 365. We'll issue and manage all the NOTAMs. We'll make sure you're notified of any events with your tower. And then we'll also come out every quarter and do the lighting system we talked about, including the 8-second video, and deliver that to you. And that's really taking off because a lot of folks don't want to have to worry about all that and want to have a nice clean package. It's $159 a month, and we're buying the lighting system with no upfront cost. And excuse me, not the lighting system, the gateway, communication gateway for it. So that's a different way of doing it. Now, the other thing that happens on that, Mike, is on year 2, it'll be time for your biennial lens inspection. So on that particular year, we'll do the same thing, but we'll come out with a drone pilot, and we'll do the biennial lens inspection, and then you'll get delivered that same package, but also with the video of it. And that's kind of handy for some people to have the video of your tower, for other reasons, because you got other antennas and those sorts of things, and it can be real helpful in that regard.
Well, you piqued my curiosity, and the reason I asked the question was right now we're fine checking our tower lights visually, but we've got one site where it's largely wooded, and yeah, there's a place where we can go at a distance, but I'm like, man, if I can't, if it's looking at the horizon in the future, the LEDs, I'll definitely have to go to a distance where it might be covered, shielded by trees where I can't even see it, but I don't have that problem right now. And want to ask, you just brought up you made a comment about the 20, you can, I guess the density can go down 25% of its original brightness, correct?
Well, I think what they say is the way the specs read is you need to create an LED such that if you lost 25% of your LEDs, it still meets specification.
Okay, the LEDs.
That's the way it was designed. And so when we run that check and push that button, it's actually doing that within the self-health check system to make sure that it's above that tolerance level.
Got it. It was about 25% of the LEDs. Okay, good to know.
Yeah. Other
Fantastic.
questions? I'm going to.
I got a couple of questions if you got a minute.
Yeah, go ahead, Joseph.
You mentioned that if you have a problem with one of your strobes, that because the rules change, you may have to change all of them.
No, what you could do is that was related to the infrared requirement under the latest specification Rev M. If you're going to replace your entire system with a new system, it's going to be an infrared system. That's required. If you've got an old system that has red lights on it, this only applies to the red lights.
Okay.
And not just, this only applies to red lights. And you have a red light that is at any of the medium levels, and you replace it with a red light that has IR in it, then you've created a false impression, and you can't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
you can't mix and match them. You have to
exactly.
have.
So
Right.
if you got an old replacement one, your old system's fine, you just need to replace one beacon.
Okay.
Then you can just replace that beacon and you're still good, because you're still under that old determination, and all you've done is repair one of your lighting beacons.
Okay.
Here's a question for you. Yeah. As we narrow up the beam width towards the horizon, and you were talking about the light pollution towards the ground that avoids, is there a corresponding tolerance on how level that fixture has to be when it's installed so that it's pointing at the horizon in all directions? And what adjustment mechanisms are available for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You would think so, and that's all part of the FAA certification process, as to what designs are certified. What we do is there's a little leveling bulb at the top when we do the installation. And that is how we install it to make sure that it's properly done. It does need to be level for sure. You can, with your drone inspections, you can actually see that leveling bulb usually. So you could tell if something were to go out of whack. Usually, if you can have an issue, it's going to be more of a falling ice or something that's radically damaged something, as opposed to your whole tower coming out of plumb to the point that's a different issue altogether. But the answer is it does need to be level, and you level it with a leveling bubble at the very top of the beacon.
Okay, so that bubble stays there all the time, and there's opportunity for the tower climbers to adjust the installation as needed.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Not that a tower would be out of plumb or anything. Okay.
Yeah. No, by the way, no one's ever asked that question.
Okay, well,
that's a good question.
I have another one, and that is, I appreciate your chart showing how the LED has progressed over time and improved, and the various lighting mechanisms. How long has the high intensity fixtures been available as LEDs?
Ooh, that's a good question. For at least 10 years. And we've got a lot of experience installing those, and they've been generally stable in terms of the design, and they've been very reliable. All of the high intensity was installed have been dial-light systems, and they haven't changed radically other than the addition of the infrared piece with Rev M. And what happened with the infrared piece is there's infrared LED chips as well. So you can take the same design, and instead of having just white and red LEDs, you can add infrared LEDs to get that same output to make sure you get your infrared piece of it covered. And you can also have, you know, the emitters that we're talking about. So 2 different ways that companies do that. But it's been at least 10 years on the high intensities.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Other questions? How often are you guys meeting, Mike?
Once a month.
Okay, that's good. Well, you got a nice group here and good attendance. We're
We do.
seeing, you know, from the COVID thing, it kind of with all the different SBE groups that it's progressed from. Sometimes the turnout was pretty bad, you know, during that time period, but it's gotten stronger and stronger. And so it's good. You got a good, strong group here. I was gonna,
It's why we have 2 chapters meeting.
yeah, you double it up that way. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and let Mike Thompson talk. Mike's gonna tell you a little bit about a different way of doing this.
And Mike, just as a reminder, you'll need to unmute yourself.
I just did.
Great.
Great. And well, thanks. This is an honor to get everybody together and to get to chat about what we love here. And in the spirit of SBE, we're not going to make this too salesy. There's not pricing and that kind of thing. Certainly quotes are available. We've got a whole quote department and can certainly quote anything that you guys may want to look at on a very quick basis. No obligation, of course. So bear slide. So got 12 minutes, and I'll just run through these slides real quickly and kind of give you the concept. In the interest of SBE, we're showing you something that's new and that you're not used to seeing, and we're not necessarily just here to sell something. We want to show you a different concept and a different way to serve your customers and different solutions. We've been in business since 2015 and have over 1,000 towers installed at this point, over 40 states, as Bear mentioned. And our verticals are radio, television, including some of the big guys, Hearst and Claire, Scripps, and of course, PBS. We love PBS. On the radio side, Hubbard and some large independents. And then we have a selection of vertical real estate customers that just rent out space to T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. And then the next vertical is one that's an increasingly important part of LumenServe, and that's public safety. And we have major installations for police departments in Orlando and Atlanta, where I'm from, and St. Louis, and a lot of county governments. In Virginia, we have Accomack County, which they started with 1 tower. They're all the way up to 6 towers at this point. And Shenandoah Power just had a big installation. And we do a lot of mom and pop radio stations around. Bear slide. And we have 2 network operation centers. One's at our headquarters in Austin, Texas, and one we have virtual. And your towers will be monitored 24/7 by 365. We report NOTAMs within 5 minutes, and we deploy to fix NOTAMs for folks that have the assurance warranty or we're fixing in less than 6 days. That's on a national basis. These red dots here are LumenServe installations. So you can see we pretty much got some states covered completely. I'd like to have a few more in Virginia, but we're slowly moving north there. Next slide, Bear. And certainly when you're looking at making tower lighting changes, you got to look at 3 different factors. One is the hard cost. Those are your actual bills that come in for repairs and for electricity and for all that you do as far as the inspection piece that you do now. And then certainly if you're keeping money aside for future lighting savings, those are your hard costs. But then also important are your soft costs. You've got to coordinate all the installers getting there. You need to, if you're in a public institution, You have to worry about the RFQ process and getting bids, getting people, comparing those bids, getting people together. Those are all indirect expenses that are definitely costly. And your time, you're probably wearing 10 different hats right now. And then you certainly don't need all this minor stuff just to replace beacons all over the place. And then certainly the risk, if you don't make the changes on your lighting system now, these lights do not go down. The inflation is going to hit us. There's macroeconomic factors of tariffs and price changes, that kind of thing. And then certainly if certainly there's weather events out there that could happen. And if you're not protected, insurance is not necessarily going to cover you 100% on a lighting system change. The cost of capital could certainly go up. And then the compliance risk, these days, you can, a nosy neighbor can actually turn you in for your paint being a bad color, or the sheriff could say your lighting system, you didn't report your NOTAM and that kind of thing. Those fines are real. We don't like to focus on the negative, but they're $10,000 or $15,000. You certainly don't want the reputation of your station on any kind of fine issue. And then certainly the downtime, if you're have issues with lighting systems, if you're off the air, you're not necessarily making any money. Slide, Bear. So this is the checklist that Bear talked about, and he went over different circulars and what's required. And our solution, our tower lighting as a solution, takes care of all that for you. So you can outsource it. That's kind of a trendy thing these days. You can outsource your compliance. Bear? So our solution is called Tower Lighting as a Service, and we invented it. We have it registered and trademarked, and nobody does it. On the public side, we actually provide sole source letters that we're the only company that does this. And what that means is we combine the 4 key components of tower lighting. That's a brand new LED lighting system, of course, a parts and labor assurance warranty, which is the best in the industry. We take care of everything, no questions asked. We do all your compliance and monitoring 24/7 by 365. We take that over for you, and we guarantee you will not have any fines. And then we also offer FAA inspections, and those are quarterly on site. And every 2 years, we do the top of the tower inspection, which would involve either a drone or a tower climb. And then also, if you do keep a tower in the painted mode, we would do your paint test for you, which in itself would cause a tower climb. And we do all this with 0 cost up front. Capital is king these days, and you could use that money for other things, for transmitter upgrades or other issues, and just pay the tower lighting as a service option. And we've got a couple different ways to go on that. Fair? So the 3 ways we have our services priced. Our first one is tower lighting as a service. It's our most popular option, probably because it's our cheapest. There's 0 cost up front. It's a flat rate for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, the rate would go up 4% if you want to continue with us. If not, we would take the lighting system down at our expense. The middle option is a variation of that. It's 0 cost up front, flat rate for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, you own the lighting system and the asset reverts over to you. So it's equivalent to what you may be familiar with as a capital lease. So same way you may lease vehicles or copiers or transmitters, you can now do that with tower lighting. And if you're a public institution or a private institution, you get the tax advantages of that 5-year CapEx option. And then the third way is the way the industry's run for the last 60 plus years, and that's just to purchase a lighting system, have us install it, and then on an a la carte basis, you can take our additional services. So we're fine either way you go. It's kind of whatever your procurement process is, and sometimes I'm actually surprised on which way folks go, but it's all different options for you depending on your individual situation. Slide. So Bear mentioned our new product, and we had such a demand for it that we offered this as a standalone package. Not everybody needs a new lighting system, but they liked our compliance and monitoring inspection package so much that we started offering it. And we have, you saw the red dots on the map, we have so much economies of scale that we're probably going by most towers anyway. So the key thing is that we supply the hardware, install it, and maintain it. And then you get the compliance and monitoring services, the remote compliance and monitoring. And then the And then you also get the inspection services, which are really key because they're every 3 months in person. Every 2 years, you do the top of the tower inspection. And if you have the painted tower, we would do the paint test for you, which would involve a tower climb. So we do all that with zero cost up front again. And Bear mentioned the price, $159 per month, and that's a 5-year term. And this is the third time you've seen the compliance checklist, and we would cover everything on that compliance checklist for you. Slide, Bear. This is our offer that we took 77 pages of FAA data and combined it into one graphic. And it gives you all the types of towers, and it shows you what's required at each level. And then the key thing is up in the left-hand corner is the FAA compliance checklist. And you'd be surprised. I've sat in meetings with the big guys, you know, the Sinclairs and the Hearst, and they don't even know that they're supposed to be doing all this kind of thing. So it's very important to know what's going on, because you'd be surprised at who gets fined these days. Just send us an email to the emails on the last slide, and we'll be happy to get one out to you. We have a large format one and a smaller format slide, and free poster info at lumenserve.com or mike.thompson@lumenserve.com, and that's Thompson with a P. So it's 1:28. So Mike, we finished on time, and I guess we have 2 minutes for questions.
All right, yeah, opened up. Anyone with questions? I never knew that was a concept. You were showing those 3 tiers. I mean, I thought everybody bought their tower lights and that was it. And boy, it's just like leasing a car, like you say, or it can be. Wow. Again, floor is open. It can be any questions, not only what Mike just discussed, but anything you've heard during today's presentation. Great presentation from both of you, by the way.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Just as a follow-up, if anybody has an interest in anything, just email us for the poster and let us know 11 by 17 or the full size. You can use lumenserve.com. It's free. Just go out, and it's a great resource. Got all the different links to the proper sites and some great blogs. We're launching the video series. We got 2 of the first 6 that'll be out there. And then if you have an interest in getting a proposal, if you've got a painted tower and you look at never paint your tower again or something else, or look at the peace of mind solution, all we generally need is your ASR numbers, and Mike will put together a short little presentation and walk you through it. And you can use that with your GM or whoever to walk through and make your business case for what we provide. And we very much appreciate you guys inviting us. You got a great chapter here, Mike. And next time, hopefully we can do it in person and eat some of that good Virginia barbecue.
Yeah, said that right. I was thinking barbecue. And I posted the website. That's a great resource. I can't wait to spend a little more time with that and look forward to the video. So thanks for doing all that as well. That is much appreciated.
Okay. You guys have a regular business meeting, right?
We do. If there are no other questions, we can just get into the business meeting.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
God bless you guys. Have a good day.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.